One of yours is the 10-minute rule.
Right.
Can you describe that? What does that mean?
So I can't take credit for it. It's been around for a long time in acceptance and commitment therapy. But the idea of the 10-minute rule is, let me back up for a second. So one of the things that people do that doesn't work is strict abstinence. Now, strict abstinence is when you tell yourself, I am not going to do that thing, right? Just say no, like Nancy Reagan told us in the 1980s. And it turns out that strict abstinence for many behaviors backfires, particularly behaviors that are very difficult to avoid completely. So, if you're a recovering drug addict, you might be able to abstain completely from a substance you abused. But how do you abstain from food if you're on a diet? We have to eat. How do you abstain from technology these days? I mean, it's imperative to do our jobs. We can't just say, stop using email for 30 days. You'll lose your job. You'll get fired. So for those type of potential distractions, we don't want to just abstain, and just to dive into, because I think the research is so interesting, when we do abstain, when we tell ourselves, no, absolutely not, it's almost like pulling on a rubber band. That when you pull on a rubber band and you stretch it, and you let go, it doesn't just go back to where you started, it ricochets even further. And that's what happens when we employ strict abstinence. We tell ourselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll give in. And that sensation of relieving the discomfort of telling yourself not to is itself pleasurable. This is a big reason why smokers get addicted to cigarettes. Smokers, when they are mindful about the experience of smoking, they actually rate it as not pleasurable. It's stinky, it's not very pleasurable. There's nothing inherently pleasurable. Nicotine does make you feel a certain way, but many smokers don't actually report it makes them feel good, it just makes them feel something. What gets them to keep smoking is not only the physiological effects of the nicotine, what more so gets them addicted is telling themselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Finally, I smoke, and now I'm relieved of the discomfort of having to tell myself, don't do it. So strict abstinence oftentimes backfires.
Yeah, this is white knuckling it. If anyone's tried to do it, it's first of all massively distracting, a lot of brain power, and then it rarely works.
Right, because when we finally do give in, we are wiring our neural circuitry to expect, when I feel the discomfort of not wanting something, giving in makes it feel so pleasurable, not because the behavior itself is pleasurable, but because it relieves us of the discomfort of telling ourselves no. So instead of you telling yourself no, what you can do is employ a technique like this 10-minute rule, where here's how it works. You tell yourself that you can give in to any distraction, whether that distraction is checking email when you want to work on a big project, whether that you're tempted to Google something or eat that piece of chocolate cake you don't want to have. You can give in to that distraction in 10 minutes. 10 minutes of doing what psychologists call surfing the urge. When it comes to these uncomfortable emotional states, we know that emotions don't last forever. In the moment, we think they will last forever. That's how the brain spurs us to do something about it, right? It spurs us to action by making us think, I don't want to feel this way anymore. But logically, rationally, when we think about it, emotions are like waves. They crest and they subside. So we can surf these urges like a surfer riding a wave. So for 10 minutes, what I oftentimes do, I'll take out my phone, I'll say, set a timer for 10 minutes, I'll put my phone down. And my job for those 10 minutes is to simply reflect on that sensation and talk to myself the way I would talk to a good friend, with self-compassion. So what many people do when they tell themselves no, when they try and not get distracted, they fit into two buckets, the blamers or the shamers. The blamers say, it's my phone that got me distracted. It's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's Slacks. That thing got me distracted. The shamers, this is the category I used to fall into, say there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this job. I'm lazy. I have a short attention span. There's something wrong with me, right? And we shame ourselves. And of course, that's not helpful either, because where does this shame spiral lead? It causes more internal triggers, which makes us even more likely to seek a distraction to escape that uncomfortable emotional state.
Yeah.
So how do you diffuse it? You don't become contemptuous, you become curious. So for 10 minutes, your job is to reflect on that sensation, to feel that sensation with curiosity rather than contempt, or to get back to the task at hand. And 9 times out of 10, by just setting that 10-minute rule and saying, I can give into that distraction, I can have that chocolate cake, I can go check my email or Google or whatever it is that I am tempted to do, but in 10 minutes. It's an incredibly effective and simple technique.
And a good example for people would be, say you're in the middle of doing some work, or you're maybe with your children and you need to be with them and you want to check the email, go have some cake, have a shot of vodka. I don't know what you want to do. And in the past, you might just do it. And it's like, okay, let's spend 10 minutes, but let's not blame and shame. I'm a shamer as well. I just tear into myself.
A lot of high performers are. It's that whole imposter complex and perfectionism. This stuff goes all hand in hand.
Yeah, and so you kind of ride it, and you talk to it as if it was a friend. Like say, okay, Brian, well, look, you could go do that, and then you could do it, but then you might not feel good afterwards. But it's interesting you brought that up, and maybe we should kind of explore that. But in the meantime, we could also just get back to the work.
Yeah.
Do you still want to check your email? Is it that important? Why are you checking your email?
Yeah. So we can explore it and tell ourselves a different story. We can reimagine the story. So we don't want to really negotiate with that saboteur in our head. What we want to do is to change the story. So for example, I used to get terrible stage fright. And when I would go on stage, I would get stressed out and I would say, oh, I'm nervous and my pits are sweaty and people are going to see it. And what if I mess up on stage? And I would look for all the bad stuff and shame myself. Oh, did I prepare enough? What if I don't say the right things? Instead, I changed the narrative to say, what am I feeling right now? Let me get curious about that. I'm feeling stress. And I changed the narrative into, why am I feeling stressed? Is it because I didn't prepare my old story, which I knew I had? It was changing that narrative to say, wait a minute, my heart is pumping right now because my brain needs more oxygen so that I can perform up to the task. So now when I'm writing, and writing is hard work, I've written 2 books, it's never gotten any easier. It's really hard work, and I'm constantly tempted to just Google something, or let me just read that book for a minute that might have some good research in it, or I bet something's happening on email, let me check that. Instead, what I tell myself is, look, getting better at something is hard. Just like I would tell to a good friend. If a friend was a writer and having difficulty writing, I would say, look, the reason it's boring, the reason you're anxious, the reason this is hard work is that things that are difficult take effort and sometimes feel boring, feel hard. And so this is a sign that you're getting better at this task. So you're reimagining the narrative.
Right, and that helps you then get up on stage and be with it. Yeah.